My name is Julie Ann Link, and welcome to the Music Link. This week on the Let's Link project, I'd like to welcome Lecolion Washington. Thank you so much for being here, Lecolion.
No, thank you, Julie. Thanks for having me.
So to start out, Lecolion, could you please share with us who you are and an overview of what you do as a professional musician?
Right now, I am the executive director of the Community Music Center of Boston. I've been here since 2017, but prior to that, I was performing a lot and teaching at universities. I was 13 years at the University of Memphis as a bassoon professor there. I also taught a couple of years at the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri. I was doing a lot of the same things people were doing after grad school, taking orchestral auditions and experiencing all the hits and misses of that life. And so I remember those experiences quite well. I also recorded a CD of music for bassoon by African-American composers. That was a project that I actually started in 2007, which is actually really interesting to me right now that people are quote unquote discovering this this CD that I actually recorded some time ago. And then also recently, I was really fortunate. I got to play on my first film. I played bassoon on the new Lion King movie, the one that came out in 2019. So I still play a little bit, but nothing like what I was doing before when I was performing more regularly. Oh, and I also was offered and I guess received what's called the Sphinx Empower Grant. And I used the Sphinx Empower Grant to do a tour, and I did concerts all over the world, and it was really nice to be able to have the Sphinx organization to support me as I was at the time I was planning to go up for full professor at the University of Memphis, but right after that I started pursuing other opportunities as well. So it's so funny, right as my career was like I feel like really starting to take off, I started looking to do some other things like what I'm doing now at the Community Music Center of Boston.
Wow, Colleen, it's amazing to hear about your career. And could you share with us about where you grew up and how you got introduced to the bassoon?
Grew up in the Dallas area. Originally, I was born in Dallas. I lived in Denton, Texas, which is where the University of North Texas is. I lived there for most of my childhood. And then my family moved to Garland. And then from there, I went to the University of Texas. But when I was in Garland in middle school, actually, this is something I just learned recently. When I was in fifth grade, my fifth grade music teacher told my soon to be sixth grade band director that, hey, this kid has some musical talent. You should put him on some instrument and he's a smart kid, so you should put him on an instrument that's a difficult instrument to play, like horn or bassoon. And so when I got to band, my band director gave me a bassoon. I started off on percussion. I really wanted to do that, but my band director gave me a bassoon and he was like, here, you're going to play this. And I was like, what is that? And he said, it's called a bassoon. And I was like, whatevs, because I just figured that you played whatever the band director gave you. My older sister Sandra, she played clarinet. And I don't know if she selected clarinet or was she just given to her, but I just assumed you're in sixth grade, you're supposed to be in band. And I picked up the bassoon and wasn't very good, but just kind of stuck with it.
Look, Colleen, could you share about where you studied music and what the programs are like?
Yeah, so when I finished high school, I went to the University of Texas. And when I originally started at the University of Texas, I was a chemical engineering major. But I was also in music classes. So I'd auditioned for the ensembles. It was like really cool. I was a freshman. I got into the top ensembles there, the wind ensemble. So I'm with Jerry Junkin, who's like to this day, one of the best musicians that I've ever just been around. But yeah, I started off at the University of Texas. When I first got there, actually, I auditioned for Karen Pearson, who used to be in the Houston Symphony, but she got the Houston Symphony job right before my freshman year. So when I got to the University of Texas, I studied with Angela Anderson, who now was second bassoon in the Philly Orchestra. And so she left after my first year. And then in my second year, I studied with Kristen Jensen, who was actually someone who I wanted to study with because I just heard about her. and she was at the time at the University of North Texas. And so I was like, oh, I could, study with her and go back home. And someone told me, it's like, well, hey, before you think about going to study with her at the University of North Texas, you should wait a minute and see how our bassoon search plays itself out. Lo and behold, she ended up getting the position at the University of Texas. So I studied with Kristen, and then I went to the Manhattan School of Music, studied with Frank Morelli, who was great for me, really great for the way that I thought. If Kristen really got me just more fundamentally sound and to really value fundamentals, Frank opened my mind up. He was like my Morpheus from the movie The Matrix. And then my next teacher, I went to SMU, Southern Methodist University in Dallas, and studied with Will Roberts. I studied with him for 1 year, and Will was the person who really just, he made the things that I was doing, he's made them more clean. He really cleaned off some of what I might have had as some things around my sound and my technique. What Will would always say is, Lecolion, it sounds beautiful and this is wonderful playing. You're never going to get an orchestral job playing that way. And that was really helpful for me, actually, to be like, because I felt like I was playing really well. And at that time, I wasn't doing well in orchestral auditions. But then when I studied with Will, it was like finals, runner up, got a job. Like it started to make a lot more sense. Because I was like, wow, I'm taking these auditions and I feel like I'm playing really well, but I'm not advancing and I'm not getting out of the second round. Like, what is this all about? But Will was the one who just kind of helped me to think about orchestral auditions in particular and how to prepare for them musically and mentally.
Wow. And Lecolion, could you share anything that you've learned about the music industry since working professionally?
I think that there are, I'll talk about this from multiple perspectives when I think about my own various identities. I'll speak about this first as just a person who loves music, who loved to play the bassoon and loved to play chamber music and to be around all these great musicians. It was something that I loved. I devoted my life to it, and it was because it was just so beautiful, and there was so much that I learned from that. What I used to tell people all the time is that I love to practice because the better a musician I became, I started then playing with these wonderful musicians, and these folks were just great people. And it was like the cover charge to be around these great people was you got to practice and be good enough to be sitting next to them in a concert. And I was like, that was the cover charge. I was, it was worth paying it. It was worth every penny. And so I was always a social person by nature. And so being around these great musicians and making this type of music with them all was something that, as I think about my life's joys, is that those moments during the concert and then after the concert when you're hanging out with all these folks who have committed themselves to this same thing that you committed yourself to, and they know all of the challenges and all of the work that goes into it. And so they know how to kind of celebrate all of that. So as a musician, music taught me that anything worth doing is worth doing well. And anything worth committing to is worth committing to. It's, if you believe in it, then you have to be comfortable giving it your all. And also it taught me that sometimes you can do everything right and things still don't work. And that's just something that you learn as a musician. You've scraped in all the right places on the reed. You've, gotten all the right fingerings, and in your 0.17 seconds of being heard, something just happened. Right.
Literally anything. An
nothing you can
earthquake.
do about it. So again, it's one of those things that kind of taught me to put in all the work and do everything as right as you can, and then learning to give yourself some grace when you've done all you can do, and not to beat yourself up about it. And that was something that I learned through music. But then as a Black classical musician, I would say that I learned that it was pretty impossible to separate the music and what was coming out of my bell from the concept of culture. And once I started in thinking about it in the context of the concept of culture, I started thinking about it in the context of my own culture and who I was and what were the communities and cultures that I grew up with. And as I thought about some of the concert halls that I played in, I started having these competing truths where many of the concert halls that I performed in, many of them were segregated. They had been segregated throughout their history. And I had to reconcile the fact that I was playing in concert halls that maybe my parents couldn't have gotten into when they were children. And that was this competing truth that I also learned and started to grapple with as I continued on through my career. And that was something that actually impacted me as I was in all of these spaces and on all these stages and in all these concert halls and at some of these universities as well. It was something that was not lost on me, and it really was one of the things that led to the kind of the next steps of my career.
So, Lecolion, that's a good segue to, did you think about leaving, the music industry and leaving music for a lot of those, those issues? Hmm.
No, actually, a lot of folks, and I get it. I think that every conversation needs to have the folks who are radicals who do leave, because you send a message if you leave loudly, especially if you're someone who had earned the right to be there already. So it's one thing to leave because you couldn't get in. It's like say, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to take any more of these auditions, or I'm not going to interview for any more college jobs because, I'm not getting them anyway. And now I'm going to stand here from this perspective of not having succeeded in the thing and saying that there's something wrong with the system of it. That's one thing. But for me, I thought it would be, say, even more if I got to a point to where I'd succeeded in that system by many measures, and was also at the same time using that as a platform to be critical of it and to be able to say, I succeeded in it, so I actually know what it might take to have some level of success in this field, and some of it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And here are the parts of it that are wrong and that can be challenging for people. And so it's not just that failed musicians have issues with it. It's actually those who succeed also acknowledge the fact that there are some components of it that are extremely exclusionary,
Mm-hmm.
and that require people to assimilate and become something or someone that they aren't in order to make them more palatable to people who are in the system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not only in the way in which you engage with your instrument, but also in the way in which you just move around personally in the world. And so again, it was really important, I felt like, for me to try to stay in it long enough for people to not to think that I was a failed musician who was just angry.
Mm. Lecolion, could you share about your teaching and your approach to teaching and any of your philosophies? Mm.
It evolved over time. So depending on which one of my students you would ask, you would probably get a different description of my own teaching. When I first started teaching, I taught the way that I was taught, very much, Weisenborn, Milday, really by the book, playing the Mozart concerto, Mozart, Weber, Saint-Saëns, like right through that curriculum. And that was just the way that I had been taught. But as I started to think more critically and think for myself rather than just regurgitating what I had been taught, I started to change my teaching quite a bit. And I started to think more about how am I teaching life skills through the bassoon. When I think about the number of students that I had over my career and the number of them that are professional musicians, there are many that are professional musicians, but not all of them. And I would hope that the ones who are not professional musicians still feel like they learned something from me beyond just playing the bassoon. And so I thought a lot about how am I teaching life skills through the bassoon, whether someone has a performance or non-performance, a music or non-music career path. And then the other thing was trying to give people an opportunity to think about their own identities, like who they were, and find ways for their instrument to be a space for them to explore that. One of the things that I did as I was sunsetting my career was I would have students play a piece that was relevant to them and some part of their identity, whatever that meant to them. If you're a woman, you want to play a piece by a woman composer, great. If you want to play a piece by a Black composer, if you want to play a piece by an Italian composer, you want to play a piece by someone who's the LGBTQ community, or whatever it is, but explore who you are through your music making. 100% of the time, the best pieces that people played on their recitals were those pieces, 100% of the time. It wasn't even like 98. Because the people who were going through that process, they were they were looking at that music from multiple perspectives. It wasn't just, write notes in time, in tune, in style with a good sound, right? It was something else. It was something else that they wanted to bring to that. And that was the thing that I wanted people to learn how to do, was to not just think of that as the music as something on the page, but trying to humanize the music and, in effect, humanizing the individual who's performing.
Lecolion, could you share a bit about your chamber music career and some of the organizations that you've started with Prism?
Yeah, Prism was great. It started off originally as a chamber music ensemble. My wife is also a clarinetist. She was one of the former principal clarinetists of the Danish radio. She was there before we got married. She left Copenhagen to move to the States to marry me. When I got the job in Memphis, we were just trying to find ways to perform like most musicians do, and doing that kind of really traditional thing that we all do, which is trying to find various ways to scratch the musical itch that we have that really no one way scratches for us. So you're playing an orchestra, it's like, I really want to play chamber music, or it's like, oh gosh, I'm playing orchestra chamber music. Oh, I'd like to do some solo recitals. Like there's always this like other thing that we want to do. And so yeah, we started this thing initially as a forgive my alarm for going off, as a chamber ensemble, and then from there, I had I forgot what year was that. I taught at this festival in South Africa. It was the Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival, and it was just an amazing place. I was there for 8 years. Some of the best musicians in the world were on the roster of this chamber music festival. And there was the concert series, which is a concert every night, different chamber concert every night. And so we were going through rep, probably play 15 pieces in like 10 days, just like rep after rep after rep. But then there was also a student component as well. And so we were coaching chamber music. And the interesting thing about that was that this was post-apartheid South Africa. And so you had a lot of students from townships and Black students who were at this university, this Afrikaans University, which was essentially a university that had been segregated. They're on this campus and they're all coming together in this one place to make music. And it was students from all over the country who came to this small town to make this music. And I remember I was one of the few, and when I first got there, one of the few Black musicians who was on the faculty. And I just remember all these young people coming up to me. I felt like a rock star. It's the first time in my life where people are getting autographs. And I started thinking we should have something like that in Memphis, which also is a predominantly Black city, and definitely has some apartheid-like just dynamics to the city, where you have this kind of financially in many ways oppressed majority in the city. And so my wife and I, we thought about creating a chamber music festival there. And then that ended up growing and becoming an international festival that we grew over the course of about 10 years. And then we turned that orchestra into a school program because we wanted to have more students of color coming to our summer program. So we started a school program so we could scholarship students from our school program to come to our summer program. So every school that we worked in, we would scholarship 5 students to come to the summer program. And then we partnered with the opera company in town called Opera Memphis to put on this performance of A Marriage of Figaro, but we worked with the general manager of the opera company to have a fully diverse orchestra, fully diverse cast. And lo and behold, you kind of wake up one day and it's like, wow, I've got a whole organization here, right? We've got a summer program, we've got a concert series, we've got a school program that runs year round. We're putting together this orchestra. It's like, well, I think we actually legitimately have an organization now that's got all these various components to it. We had this great program in a neighborhood in Memphis called Orange Mound. Orange Mound was a Black neighborhood. It was one of the oldest Black neighborhoods in America, where there was Black home ownership as well as ownership of the land that the homes were on. So we had this program there called the O Music Project at OM Orange Mound, the O Music Project that we did there. And so again, it just ended up becoming this really, really cool organization that was committed to not only diversifying the institutions, but also opening up really the city to all the various ways in which music could impact the conversations in the city. And that was really a big part of it. But no, it was great. I loved that. That was, I really thought that was going to be my life's work until I went to the Memphis Music Initiative, where I could talk about that later, but that was another place where I got to be one of the founding fathers of an organization. And I really thought that was going to be my life's work until I got to the Community Music Center of Boston here, where I got to mold a 110-year-old organization into something new, into something that has evolved into something that is the future. And so I think maybe this is going to be my life's work now. So,
It'd be wonderful to hear more about your orchestra career and a memorable audition, if any come to mind.
yeah. So, gosh. Orchestra career. Strangely, I didn't full-time play in an orchestra, although I won a job. So when I was at SMU, I was taking auditions, and I finally ended up getting into the finals for the principal bassoon of the Houston Grand Opera. I was the runner-up for that job, but the person who won was already in the orchestra playing second. So he moved up, and then they offered me the position. And I was preparing to go to Houston to be in this orchestra. And a few months later, I got the job teaching at the University of Missouri. I was like 26 at the time. And I never really wanted to full-time play an orchestra. I really wanted to teach, but I wanted to understand how to take and win auditions before I got to the point to where I was trying to teach people how to do that. And I was like, well, you just kind of won one. So you're in the finals of the last 2. You just won one. I think we're good.
Definitely.
And so I took the college job. I took the college teaching job instead. But I would say that if there were any orchestra that I would have wanted to have played in, it would have been an opera orchestra. I loved playing opera. I always felt like my most beautiful playing was playing in opera orchestras. And that I would say that that's not the audition that I remember the most. The audition that always landed with me, and I won't say the name of the orchestra, but I'll say what my experience was. because it's happened to me more than once in my career. I was auditioning for an orchestra. I was in the final round, and I played my round. And we're sitting in the waiting room, and we're waiting, and they ended up saying, okay, well, we'd like to offer the position to number 2 or whatever, candidate number 2, and this person gets the job. And as I had an opportunity to then ask for some feedback, for my audition, which was a great thing that they offered. And essentially what I was told was, it was a second bassoon audition, and it was like, what I was told was, well, the committee thought you were a strong player, and probably the strongest player and a stronger player. But the committee also felt like this person just sounded like would be more suited for second bassoon playing. So even though we thought you might have been the stronger player, we thought that this person was stronger second bassoon player. And that happened to me multiple times when I was runner up for things. Was that either one was like, this person fit better in the section. I had another one where, again, that happened. Another one where where people thought, they were like, oh, well, we think you're a very strong player, and we're not sure if we would be able to retain you in this orchestra for very long, things like that. So it's all these like weird dynamics happening on the back end of the process that I was as someone who was just a kid in his 20s looking for a job, right? That kind of turned me off a little bit to some of that as well, because again, you go to school to learn how to play and learn how to be a really strong player. And so to have gotten to that point and heard that multiple times was always just a weird thing for me. But I will say my favorite one would have been Houston, because that was the most relaxed I ever had been for an audition ever. Most relaxed I'd ever been. All 3 rounds, like I had prepared, and I was just like boom, boom, boom. And it was just, and I needed to prepare because that same night after I won, or I was offered that position, I was playing a concerto in Dallas. And so I had to fly back just in time to catch the downbeat for playing concerto with the student orchestra after having gotten this job. So anyway, needless to say, it was, that was a memorable one, because I literally got off the plane, and it was like, I got something to eat really fast, and I was going out playing the Weber concerto, because I'd won the concerto competition. So it was, that was a very Lecolion type of thing to do, but
Wow, yeah, back to back to back, headed to the next.
That's right, exactly, that's right. First round, second round, finals, 2 finals, I think, finals rounds twice. Having someone fly to get me to the airport just in time to get on a plane, to fly an hour, to get back to Dallas, to play a concerto, downbeats in 45 minutes.
And then maybe a colleague's like, I've had my coffee this morning. Like,
Heck of a day. That was a heck of a day. But now on the positive, that was really fun. That was really fun. That was a fun time.
could you share with us any advice on coping with music performance anxiety? That's a good experience. Just, you got to do it. You got to do your work and make it happen.
Yeah. Well, I struggled with performance anxiety for a while, and I read every book that I could find on it. And I wished that someone had told me a more just overall humane way of getting through that, and recognizing that it was that I needed to develop some coping skills for it, as opposed to just powering through it. And that was something that I learned later in my career, that having the right type of just coping skills remove some of the anxiety. I know that for me, my mouth used to get really dry. And so I would make sure I always had water with me. And I would start to shake, but if I could relax and center, I could remove some of the shaking. I would get tense right here. That was another place where I would just carry tension. And so if I could release that tension, then that was better, rather than be like, relax, 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 you get more and more, but it's like, how does it manifest itself? For me, just being able to learn how to just scan my body, I started doing these things where I would get a heart rate monitor, and I would, play, especially preparing for auditions. I'd play and I'd see where my heart rate was. And so I wasn't even monitoring my playing. I was monitoring how I felt while I was playing. And so then it's like, okay, well, let me see now, how do I recenter and get my heart rate down? So when I'm playing, something like, Ravel Piano Concerto, my heart rate's going to go up. And so if I'm playing that excerpt, even when I play it well, my heart rate's going to go up. And so I need to, in between excerpts, just give myself a second to recenter, and just try to stay relaxed. And then starting to learn how to simplify how I thought about the Ravel Piano Concerto using the process cues from Don Green, where it's just like, fluid. So just, relax, fluid, and then start to play, and just go. And then when it's over, even if my heart rate has gone up, it's like, okay, well, that's passed. Now my heart rate's up. Let me just breathe and feel what it feels like to have my heart rate back to normal, so I can get myself back to zero. And then I would then turn the page. So I wouldn't turn the page until I had released whatever I just experienced, and just breathe and then turn the page. And because that was part of my practice regimen, which is when I was doing my mock auditions for myself, I would practice that feeling and practice getting myself back to zero, and then turn, and then process cue, do my 3 breaths, and then, oh my God, what just happened in my mind? Oh my God, oh my God. Wait a minute. Now we know what to do here, Nicole. We breathe, we release, we monitor what's happening with our heart, we release some more, and then when we're ready, we turn the page, right? So it was really just kind of getting that into a rhythm, that when I started taking auditions, even if I was had some nervousness, I tried to get to where the nervousness didn't impact my playing, because all the books, they say the same. None of them says, read this book to learn how not to be nervous when you're taking an audition that could potentially change your career, right? None of them say that. They say, fight your fear and win. Feel the fear and do it anyway, right? Right? So it's like acknowledging that the thing is there. If it's there, it's there. Some people don't experience this, so they don't know what it's like, but those of us who do, it's a thing that's there. And so the question is, how do we find a humane way of feeling that thing, but not having it impact our ability to play our instrument really well? That's the real trick. Because once you've done that enough, some of the anxiety goes away, because you will have then experienced yourself doing the thing really well with this, having managed this feeling before. So then you become more confident in your ability to manage the feeling. Because that's what it is. It's a feeling. It's not about, if you can play it, you can play it. The feeling keeps you from being able to play it sometimes. So you're not navigating your ability to play, you're navigating what you feel. And so really taking some time for that is really helpful. And then the last thing, forgive my long form answer, but the last thing I did was I wrote down all of the negative things I would say about myself. I would just get a whole list of them, and I wrote them all down. And then on another sheet of paper, I wrote the exact opposite. And I wrote examples of when I had proven the opposite. So I'd be like, Lecolion, you crack under pressure. And then I would say, Lecolion, you always perform well under pressure. And I would, like, that time you played Beethoven 4, that time you played Scheherazade, blah, 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 blah. So I have this evidence of that. And I recorded myself reading those, and I put them in my ears. And every morning for like a year, I reprogrammed my brain to hear me saying, you always perform well under pressure. Your technique is beautiful and fluid, right? Like all of these things that the opposite of what I would tell myself. So it helped me to reprogram my brain a little bit while I was also working on just the biomechanics of my body.
What did you notice change over that year? Were you a new person? Did you, or like, and and let, or it's like the practice of physically doing it and then physically literally getting it out of your being.
Yeah, I think that it was all of those. I think that it did just as much for me as a human as it did for me as a bassoonist. And I think that, they say, how you play is who you are, and in many ways sometimes. And I was a person who carried around a lot of tension and a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry. And all that really taught me was how to cope with that. I remember several performances after I'd gone through that process where one of the things I would do when I got nervous, my eyes would just go everywhere. And so I had to teach myself to, if I was doing that, to just look at the bottom of the stand and just find one fixed point and just focus on that rather than trying to drown everything out. It's like, just focus on one thing. And I started catching myself being more confident in my ability to do what I needed to do. Did I still make mistakes? Absolutely. But I think I made fewer mistakes, and I didn't feel terrible when I was playing well. And sometimes I felt terrible even when I was playing well. I'd go back and listen to the recording. I was like, wow, that sounds really good. Felt terrible. Right? Yeah. Who wants to do that? Right. Mm-hmm. And so I started, I think if anything, it helped me to be able to embrace and enjoy when I was playing, when I felt like I was playing well. It allowed me to be able to recognize when I was playing well in real time. And so I could enjoy being in the moment on stage rather than being who I had been before, which is judgmental on stage. And then sometimes enjoying the recording, a week or two later, which again, you kind of deal with the anxiety over the couple of weeks until you hear the recording. Whereas sometimes I was able to just enjoy being in the moment in a concert, playing chamber music with people and being like, oh my gosh, and it's my turn. And this is so lovely for us to be doing this. And so lovely, these people want to hear it. As opposed to being like, oh my gosh, I hope a bassoonist doesn't realize I'm using the short E fingering, like, right? Which is what my brain did sometimes, So, but no, I think overall, it made me just more comfortable in the moment, and it changed me as a person. Because I learned to manage my own overall understanding of the concept of anxiety.
Lecolion, I wanted to shift to reeds. Could you share just an overview of your bassoon reed making and any techniques that you practice?
It took me a long time to just understand reed making. I always felt like it was more, what was it? Ben Kamens once said, he was like, listen, you're dealing with a vegetable, Lecolion. And I also, because I was a poor college student, I wanted to make every piece of cane work. And so I had no value to any of the pre-work of selecting cane. I remember thinking, I was like, gosh, man, some pieces of cane you can take a blowtorch to and it's still going to play for you. It's just like that piece of cane is just doing it. I don't know what it is about it. And then other pieces of cane, you treat it like like your favorite child or whatever. And it's not going to do anything for you. It's just not going to be good to you. But then, kind of thinking about, getting the right profiling machine, getting hardness testers, density testers, all those things. Like, as I started to use more of them, my consistency in reed making increased dramatically. And then once I got the Rimple, I got a Rimple machine, and that was the last part. And also, again, when I was working with Will Roberts, my year working with him, I probably tried out 10 or 15 different shapers. And before that, I was just like, buying gouge shaped and profiled cane and going with it. And Will was like, no, you got to really, your shaper, that's your sound. That's how you play. And so I tried all these different shapers. And so then that kind of took me in a path to, there was no right way or no wrong way. What you're trying to do is find a way that you can make reeds consistently, and that whatever you're doing is very balanced. And it's not just like meaning that the blades are balanced metrically. It's that sometimes it's like, oh, this one is kind of balanced a little bit heavy here. I want to, take out a little bit more here. It may not look perfectly, but if I'm really in tune with what's happening in here and, and what's happening up here, then I can scrape in the reed to accomplish some of those things. The most important part of it for me, though, was getting as far along in that process before it got to the nuance of it. Because in the beginning, it was like as soon as I clipped, the nuance began. And that's not ideal either for me, so that's why the Rimple was so helpful, because it's like you clip and then there's another set of scrapes that gets you to a little bit farther along in the process. And then you're starting to deal with the nuance after that. I love that machine. At the end of my career, if I'd gotten it earlier, I'd probably still be playing. But all the scraping was just a thing that just took up so much time. I watched so many Law and Order marathons trying to scraping away on reeds. But after I got a good system that got me far enough along in the process where I could do a few scrapes here or there, that was great. And also after I got to a point to where I would throw a blank in the garbage early, I learned to fail fast with a blank. And before, when I was a college student, because again, you want every blank to work, I would, play on, something's not working. It's like, well, let's keep trying. Let's spend another 2 hours on it. But as I got older, I realized that, listen, fail fast, right? If it's not working, if you feel like it's going to take you, just throw it in the go, bless and release.
Lecolion, are there any skills that we learn through music that apply to everyday life that you could share with us about?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there are, well, I'm going to I'll answer that, but I'll also share something alongside it. One is that it's often that we music teachers, we say that things are happening because someone picks up an instrument, and they really aren't. And we as teachers aren't really teaching people how to do that thing. And now some might get that thing and some might not. So people talk about this concept of hard work. Some might get that, some might feel like they're in an oppressive environment. Right. And so I oftentimes hesitate to discuss some of the ancillary benefits of playing music unless it's really clear that a teacher was really intentionally trying to do that. Because sometimes we take credit for things that happen on our watch, even if we didn't actually make that thing happen. But in response to your question, which is a solid one, I think that there are many teachers who teach their students how to think critically. I think that there are many teachers who do that, not the teachers who teach rote and you got to do it this way and that, my way or the highway, and, you scrape here and, and like, and that's it. Like, not that. That's not teaching critical thinking at all. But there are a lot of teachers, I think, who teach critical thinking skills, which is, okay, there's a challenge here that we got to work together to solve for. Here are some suggestions on my end as a teacher. Try these, and then try something that you come up with on your own. Let me know what you come up with, because I'll use it with another student probably, right? So like there are these teachers who are creating this this bi-directional relationship, and like students are really learning to think critically via their music making. I think that is a thing that, depending on the teacher, I think some students are really learning. I do think that there are, I think that as difficult as this, as it is sometimes, we also learn that, as I mentioned earlier, you can do everything right. You can, give it your best effort. You can really care about the thing, and it can be really meaningful to you, so meaningful that you will hurt your body sometimes, and the thing still won't work. And that doesn't mean that you are a bad person or flawed. This means that the thing didn't work. And so if we do this well, we can also learn that our value as a human being is not wrapped up in what we do or what comes out of the end of our bell. That is a thing that music has the opportunity to teach us. Whether or not it does in every circumstance, I don't know, but it does have an opportunity to teach us that. And then also, I think it gives us an opportunity to commune with just other cultures, other places, other time periods in world history. And it has an opportunity to teach us so much about various kinds of people and various kinds of experiences above and beyond those that are rooted in Western Europe. And there's an opportunity for our music and music learning to be able to do that. It doesn't always, but it could. It really, really could.
And Lecolion, could you share any advice for musicians just starting out their music careers?
Yeah, I'll share them from multiple levels, I think. So if you are a high school student, if you're a high school student, really understanding the value of focused practicing can be a huge thing. If you're an undergraduate student, I used to tell my undergrads all the time that once you get your mind right, you're going to be great. And really developing the ability to just get your head right, because those undergraduate years are difficult for all the various reasons that they are. And being able to get your head right first, and focusing on getting your head right while you're trying to get better. But no, I've got to get my head right first in order for me to maximize my potential. I think that that's an important thing too. For graduate students, it would be get your ears better. What tends to happen in the graduate level is your ears get better first. Like your ears start hearing these things in your sound and in your playing that you want to fix, and you kind of feel terrible for a minute, and you go through this process of working through some of those things. You feel much better. That's the moment in which your ears have to get better again, because they got to hear something new. And so there is this process of we always think that I got to practice and get better here or get better here, but it's actually getting better here first. So listening to as many other instruments, listening to other bassoonists, recording yourself all the time and listening to it. But all of those things are in service of making your ears better. Again, listening to your vibrato, listening to your overall tone, listening across registers, all of those, listening to the speed of your vibrato, the depth, listening to your own intonation, like really being unjudgmentally critical or non-judgmentally critical, I think, and really thinking about, like, I'm just listening to what am I hearing. I think that's an important part of that graduate level, is just being able to hear and then get better, and then hear and then get better. And so valuing that time of just listening. It's not just honking away and scraping away and with music in the background. And it's not just listening to find out if you come in after the clarinet or not, right? It's not just listening to see which fingering did this bassoonist use to get through that passage. It's also like really listening more deeply to make yourself a better listener of your own playing and other playing in service of getting better.
And Lecolion, is there anyone that you'd be interested to suggest to be interviewed next on this project?
If you have not spoken to Garrett McQueen, Garrett McQueen is great. If you have not spoken to Maya Stone, you have spoken to Maya Stone.
Yes,
Maya Stone.
yes. And we have,
Maya,
yes.
Maya's great. Monica Ellis, of course. If you haven't spoken to Anthony Parnther, he's in California. If you haven't spoken to Rufus Olivier, if you haven't spoken to, let's see, Shawn Jones, I think his name is Tariq Masri. He is in, I think, Mississippi, Birmingham, something like that. Those are a few. What's his name? The new principal in Fort Worth, Joshua Elmore, I think his name is. I could be making that name up. Andrew Brady in Atlanta. If you haven't spoken to Joey, I don't remember their last name for some reason. But yeah, those are names that come to mind. Oh, and Nadina, Mackie Jackson. If you haven't spoken to Nadina, Nadine is a bomb diggity. I love her so much. She is such an amazing human. We got quite close over the course of about 4 years, and she's just awesome, really awesome. So those are some names that pop into my mind right offhand.
Thank you so much, Lecolion, and I would love to reach out to them. And I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to interview you today and get a further glimpse into your life and career as a professional musician. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thanks for giving me a chance. And I hope that the bassoon world knows how much you are doing to make sure that people's voices are being heard. So thanks for having the program.
Thank you. For everyone watching, check out Lecolion's live hosting session coming up this Sunday, where he's sharing an open panel discussion. Find out more about Lecolion and his work at the Community Music Center in Boston at the website cmcb.org. Please like, comment, and share any questions or feedback in the section below, and we'd be happy to incorporate these in the live discussion. Please subscribe to this channel and turn on the bell for notifications, which really helps keep the Music Link moving forward. The Music Link is a New Zealand-based resource for people around the world to share, learn, and connect through music. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video.